Greetings everyone, once again it's Motamwani D sharing the authentic truth brought to us by Zulula 100. And here today the teaching I will share in English is going to be regarding the unexpected manifestation of the Christ, transcendental initiation. So here, take note, it's a very important teaching. It's a subject that shook some people. So it's regarding the resurrection of the true Christ. Jokisabe. So after his resurrection, his appearance to some of his apostles. So it is not the usurper, the so-called Jesus Christ, the false Christ. No, the so-called false Christ in the current classic of the Bible, as he has appeared, they claim, in many ways to some apostles. Here we shall speak regarding the true Christ, Jokisabe, regarding his appearance to some of his apostles, and it's going to be in Bibèl, the book of the truth, the only authentic Bible in the world without any errors or contradiction. So for that we go in Kundumane Mula, chapter 60, verse 1. So it's going to be, first of all, what is the revelation? Revelation is to reveal the action. So before the manifestation of Jokisabe in the visible, so of the true Christ in the visible plane, his existence in the visible plane was a mystery. The prophets, so the Batopeda Mudi, so the major prophets, did prophesy on his arrival. They prophesied progressively in different epoch, in different eras and civilization on his arrival. And it was always a mystery to many people and many peoples. So when Jokisabe did manifest in the visible plane, everything he did were prophetic gestures and mysterious for some. So the gesture, the scene he permitted for you, so for us to relive, for us to be conscious of, is in Kundumane chapter 60 verse 1 and also verse 1 to verse 21. So they tried to falsify that scene in the current classic of the Bible, but they got it wrong. They got confused. Now, when we go in Kundumane Mula chapter 60 verse 1 in Bibèl Kaltambale, the book of the truth, the only authentic Bible without any errors or contradiction, it says this, and I will translate here in English for us. After that, Jokisabe showed himself again to the apostles, So here you're told that he appeared, so he showed himself again. That means he has previously shown himself. And then there's a comma. There were 7 in numbers on the shores of the lake, period. And this is how he showed himself. So the question is why the number 7? Why not 12? First, because Soma, so the apostle Soma was no longer there. The one you know under the name Judah. So they were 11. But why were there only 7 present at that moment, at that particular time, when Kundumane Mula Jokisabe came? And who were those 7 apostles? Why were they at the side of the lake, so on the shore of the lake? Why didn't he, meaning Jokisabe, allowed them to be 11? He allows you, so he allowed us to relive things of the creation. You are shown a glimpse of who had become Jokisabe during his resurrection. He made the apostles relive things in details. So when we go in Origin chapter 1 verse 2, it says, so in Bibèl, so Origin chapter 1 verse 2, Massima Wase, planet Earth, was a mass of primordial fluid water without physical life and was suspended in the immensity of the visible universe. Period. Mysterious obscurity covered the very deep chasm, and the manifestation of the will of Loba by his verb was still exercising his generating talent above the primitive water beyond the great veil, out of the universe. Period. Thus, 7 mighty entities of the great order of things began to pat above the primitive water beyond the great veil, comma, they were ineffable noises and voices that is not allowed to a man to express. Period. So here, in Bibèl, Origin, chapter 1, verse 2, you're told regarding that's the creation at the beginning. And in Origin, you have to understand here that the lake where the apostles were, so the 7 apostles in Kundumane Mula chapter 60 verse 1, where the lake represent the Mangaba, so the water. You will understand why the universe was obscurity. So the 7 apostles will represent the 7 entities of the beginning of the creation. And the side of the lake, so on the shore of the lake, that will represent the Mangaba, so the ocean, the primitive waters of the beginning. So that's why you're told in Origin chapter 1 verse 2, Massima Wase planet Earth was a mass of primordial fluid water without physical life. And then you're told, thus 7 mighty entities of the great order of things began to pat above the primitive water beyond the great veil. So you're told 7 mighty entities. So the 7 apostles, once again, will represent those entities. And when was it? When did that scene take place? You have to understand that it was at night, because the creation happened a big part in darkness, in obscurity, and in the water, the Mangaba, the primitive water. So on the shore, on the riverside, so on the side of the lake, that represent the water. And 7, it's Samba. So the apostles were 7 in numbers, and it wasn't just any apostles, no. They were important. It does not mean that the other apostles that were not present at that time, they were not important, no. But why? Because the names of the apostles that were there were very important. When Joki Sabe reappeared, it means everything. In the creation, in the visible, and in the non-visible. It's regarding the faith, spirituality, and all of all and each. So, and then you were also told in Origin, there were ineffable noises and voices that is not allowed to a man to express. Now, when we go in Kundumane Mula chapter 60, verse 2 to 7, here we're going to enumerate, so we're going to be enumerating the names of the apostles that were by the lake, on the shore of the lake. And to reproduce, in short, the scene. We will not say to stage, it's not to stage, but it's the scene that happened during the creation. So the first is Dale. So the first apostles is Dale, known in the current classical Bible as Peter. Why first? Because the faith must be built on the rock. Peter represents the rock, the stone, Dale. So the foundation, pure, the earth, that's Dale. He represents the stone, the rock. And at the start, it was water. And then the ground. And it was the firm. So the firm earth, and it was a rock. So first, we manifest the rock, the faith. It is a hard foundation on which we build. So it's the solid, the foundation, the base of the faith. Now, the second apostle, the second name is Lakisabe. And Lakisabe is known as John in the current classical day Bible. And that's the forgiveness. Forgiveness. Here we go into another dimension where all those who will repent, who will reject their past ways, who will recognize their fault, will be forgiven. So the 7 apostles were placed, and Jokisabe allowed that there would be 7 apostles that would be on the shores of the lake for a precise goal, for a purpose. The apostles themselves did not know what was happening, why they were 7 in numbers. They simply knew that they were 7 and they were talking among themselves. But we will see what is going to happen. So Lakisabe will represent forgiveness. When you build on the rock, it means you are on the solid. That means you have proven yourself. All form of weird spirituality, false doctrine won't crush you, won't seduce you. Because you are on the rock, you are on a solid foundation. And when you are on the rock, so when you are on the stone, you have already received the forgiveness. That's why we speak of Lakisabe. And in that rock, we speak of Munaganda. So that's the 3rd apostle. So Munaganda is son of the thunder. So the thunder, also the lightning, is known in the current classical day Bible as James. So it's Munaganda, son of the thunder. Why? When the entities appeared, so the entities of the great order of things, when they appeared, they have sound like thunder, like also great waters. And so behind the thunder, the storm, there is lightning. So behind the thunderstorm, there is lightning. And behind, there are sparkles. So there are voices that produce behind. So firstly, you build on your faith on the foundation, so on the stone, the solid, that Dale. Then Lakisabe, the forgiveness. So forgiveness. And when you are on the rock and that you have received forgiveness, you are mysterious compared to those who are not like you. So that's in how the third, you become a son of the thunder. So the thunder will represent judgment. Because when we speak regarding the thunder, even in the current classical day Bible, during the judgment, certainly there will be thunder that resound, earthquake, so God will make the thunder rumble, rumble in heaven. So the thunder will represent, the thunder can also represent fertility, because with thunder, there's also the rain that will come after. So you become mysterious for the people of the visible. So when you speak spiritually, they won't understand your language. They won't understand what you will say, what you're saying. Like the angels, the Bamululoma. When they appeared, sometimes you couldn't understand audibly the voice. You could not understand what they were saying, because you were hearing the voice of the thunder, or great water, or great waters. So you become mysterious now for those of the visible. And then the fourth is Tondi et Kabbalah, to love the horse. So it's known in the current classic of the Bible as Philip. So we can also say Wosi, like in English, horse, but is in ancient Douala is Ekabala. So Tondi et Kabbalah, to love the horse. Ekabala will represent your mount on a horse. Your mount a horse, because even when the powerful Baal, the prophet, ascended, he got taken in the great order of things. It was a chariot of fire with horse of fire that came with the entities to take him. So, and also when the kings, sometimes they are anointed. For example, Mon, known as Solomon, when he was taken to be anointed to be king, it was on a royal horse. So the royal horse, the horse will represent the power. So you become like a prince, like princes and princesses, king, queen, so kings and queens. Because you have a royal horse that will represent the power, the speed. Because if you are pursued and you have a horse, so you're very fast, so you cannot be caught up. And they cannot even understand where you are, because you have the doctrine. So the doctrine becomes like a thunder. And you need to have the spirit to decode what you are saying, to understand you. That's why sometimes when you will speak, people will say, wow, there's a knowledge there, but I want adventure in it, because most people are afraid of the thunder. They are afraid of the lightning. When they hear the sound, some people are afraid of it. And at the same time, you have the spirit of forgiveness. So you forgive, you can forgive according to the justice, while being built on the rock. And the fifth one is Jabea, known in the current classic of the Bible once again as Matthew. So Jabea is the donation. So the donation is like a gift. So you become a gift, so a donation for the members of your family, for your neighbors, for mankind, for humanity, to the uninitiated, for your colleagues. Yes, a donation. So it's not the gift, it's not having the gift of doing miracles, to speak languages, no. Because you have accepted the verb, you have followed the verb, so you are building your faith, your spirituality on the rock. And then you receive the forgiveness, then you become mysterious. So the son of the thunder, the storm, like a tornado. Then you become like a prince. like a king or a princess or a queen on a royal horse. Then you become like a donation, a gift for humanity. It's very important. Take notes. So the sixth is Diwasa, known as Thomas in the current classical Bible. So it means the twin, not the Diwasa, so Thomas who doubted, because there is Diwasa, there is the one who doubted that Jokisabe has resurrected. But there is one who had, there is another who had the vision. So who believed. So that's why Diwasa had to be there. Because the man came in the visible to imitate the virtue of the entities of the great order of things. So when we say Moto, so the first man, Moto, is an entity. For example, the Benengudi is, you can say, Moto who has the power. In the current classical Bible is Gabriel. So in the book of Daniel, it says, for example, I saw the man Gabriel. So Moto, who has the power. Or also a man clothed in linen. So Moto, who is clothed in linen. So Diwasa will represent what? That firstly, when you have built your faith on the rock, so you are no longer subject to the false doctrine, so no one so you are no longer subject to the false doctrine, to the false spiritualities and so on. So you have received completely the forgiveness. You've been forgiven. And you also have forgiven yourself regarding your past mistakes, regarding your fault, regarding your bad thoughts, and so on. Then you became mysterious, like the thunder. And you are on a royal horse, like a king or a queen. Then you become a donation to humanity. Then Diwasa. Diwasa, the twin. So you'll be like those of the great order of things, having the virtue, like the powerful patriarch and matriarch. So you'll become twin by your action, by your deeds, by your way of doing things, like the patriarch and matriarch, by your works. And then the seventh is Abea, means to offer, known as Nathanael. So it means to offer. So you are offered like a perfume, a good perfume. You become like a great present. You are offered. In it, you go and you announce the word, the good news. You share the truth. You testify of your faith, of your experience, of your spirituality. You give testimony of your experience. And Abea was an initiate among the apostles. So you also give the solution to those who do not yet know Lopa, the only and unique creator. So those were the seven apostles. Now, in verse 3, He says in Kundumane Mula chapter 60 verse 3, he says, Dale said to them, I'm going to fish. They said to him, we are also going with you. They went out and got into a big canoe, and that night they caught nothing. Period. So here you're told that Dale said to them, I'm going to fish. They said, we are also going with you. So here you can already see the unity, the togetherness. They were one. They were united. One did not say, oh, I have to go collect mangoes. I'm going home. You're coming or what? No. They were all in unity. And you're told they went out and got into a big canoe. And that night, so it was at night, like I've mentioned regarding Origin chapter 1 verse 2, regarding the obscurity. So it was during the night. But you're told they caught nothing. And why didn't they caught anything? Because in the beginning of the creation, in the beginning, first, there were no animals yet. So there were no physical life or life with souls, living beings with souls. So before the animals at the beginning of the creation, there were no souls in the creation. So the day had to manifest. So the day had to manifest for them to be able to catch. Something had to happen. It does not mean that previously they could not catch fish at night. No. Jokisabe allowed that they got nothing that night for us to receive this teaching. The apostles were still like young children. It needed a small details for them to be able to catch fishes. So the day had to manifest. Now, in verse 4, in Kundumane Mula chapter 60, verse 4, it says, the morning having come, Jokisabe was on the shore, but the apostles did not know that he was Jokisabe. So the morning had to manifest. Previously, they were able to catch fish at night, but for that particular moment, they couldn't. For them to succeed, something had to manifest. It was a teaching. It was a scene that Jokisabe allowed to happen so that you who are here, you can receive this teaching today in this reality that is the past part your present. So the apostles, they were 7 in numbers, and with Jokisabe, that's 8. So the 8th person will represent what? Jokisabe will represent the circumcision, because it is at the 8th day that the child must be circumcised. It does not mean that the apostles were not circumcised. No. It was regarding the revelation, regarding the scene, regarding the teaching. the apostles, according to the teaching, they were still young children. They had to receive the mark of the circumcision that will represent Jokisabe, so the eighth person. And that's why you even told they did not recognize him. Like the other apostles on the road to Emmaus. Now, in Kunumane Mula chapter 60 verse 5, it says, Jokisabe said to them, children, come out. So you're told here, they were still young children. That's what Jokisabe said, children. They were young children. Even though they had some experience, even though they built on the rock, they received the forgiveness and so on, all that experience, but they were nevertheless children. To grow up, to know, you need to have the experience, the initiation, to know the mark of the circumcision. Not only physical, but spiritual. So, Kunumane Mula chapter 60 verse 5, Jokisabe said to them, children, have you nothing to nourish your body? ? They replied, no. So they answered no, to nourish the body. So what it says here, have you children, have you nothing to nourish your bodies? ? Nourish the body. What does it mean? If we go in depth, what does it represent? Jokisabe is initiating them. In the current classic of the Bible, they claim that fake Jesus told them to throw the net to catch the fish. But the true Christ, Jokisabe, could not tell them after his resurrection to throw the net. To throw the net. Because he was no longer a normal man. Simple. As an entity, he couldn't allow that you go and fish, catch the fish, because the fish will die. He could not allow that in his presence. So Jokisabe, after his resurrection, could not eat meat. He couldn't allow his apostle to also do the same in his presence, to kill the animals in his presence. So he can't allow his apostles who have reached a certain experience, highly spiritual, to do what they did before his arrival, before his resurrection. But the current Bible writers could not understand that. But the apostles, they understood. They were being initiated. They understood the language. In that dialogue, they were being initiated. They understood what Jokisabe was asking, and they said no. In that no, he gave them the solution. They were growing up spiritually. So they were growing up spiritually even more. They were being circumcised. It represents the circumcision. Verse 6, and they threw the net on the right side of the boat. Period. They could not take it out anymore, because of the large amount of fish. Verse 7, then Lakisabe said to Dali, it is the muledi. And Dale, as soon as he heard that he was the Muledi, he threw himself into the lake. So you're told here in verse 7, then Lucky Sabe said to Dale, colon, and the colon is 2 point. And those 2 dots will represent the 2 witnesses. So why did Lucky Sabe have to speak to Dale? Why Lucky Sabe at that moment? Why not Diwasa? Some people will try to explain, come up with theories. They'll try to say, no, it's because Lucky Sabe was close to Dale. Well, we know that they were close, but wasn't Lucky Sabe also close with the other apostles? He was also close with the other apostles. Lucky Sabe will represent forgiveness, like I've mentioned. So the forgiveness will speak to the rock, will speak to the stone. By speaking to the rock, and you have to understand that in the forgiveness, there is the love. So the love, so you are speaking to someone who will represent, so Dale will represent someone who is hard, someone who is solid, someone who has a certain behavior. Let's say a hard behavior, who doesn't want to recognize his fault. When that person will receive the love, receive the forgiveness, what does happen? What does he do? That love, that forgiveness soften him. So it is his hardness, his hardship that is being removed. That's why Lucky Sabe will speak to Dale and say, he said, it is the Muledi. So it is the master. Because you have to be in the truth, in the love, in the softness. So to recognize. The forgiveness can pierce the vision. So only love can recognize love. That's why the scene that Joki Sabe, the true Christ, was showing here, the apostles didn't know that it was Joki Sabe. But you're told, Lucky Sabe said to Dale, it is the Muledi. And why was it Lucky Sabe? Because he said, and Dale, as soon as he heard that he was the Muledi, he threw himself into the lake. So why was it Lucky Sabe that threw himself into the lake? That swam. That went to swim. Why not Lucky Sabe? Because we know that when you take a rock or a stone, you throw on the water, it's going to sink. It's going to go into the bottom. And even Dale, in his history, he wanted to be sure that he was Joki Sabe. And then he started to sink when he doubted. For that scene, we go in Kundumane Mula chapter 31, verse 31 to 34. The title is Dale walks on waters. Verse 31, it says, Dale answered him, Muledi, if it is you, command that I go to you on the water. So here it says, if it is you. So if it is you, because he's doubting, there is doubt. But in Kundumane chapter 60, verse 7, when Lakisabe said to him, it is the Muledi, he did not doubt. In Kundumane Mula chapter 31, verse 32, he says, and Jokisabe said, come. Dale got out of the canoe and walked on the water to go towards Jokisabe. Verse 33, but, seeing Njenguma Madiba, a siren of the waters, through the eyes of his spirit at the bottom of the lake, and that the wind was strong, he was afraid. And as he began to sink, he exclaimed, Muledi, save me. Immediately, so verse 34, immediately Jokisabe stretched out his hand, seized him, and said to him, man of little faith, why did you doubt in my presence? Question mark. So, when we go in, now we go in Kundumane Mula chapter 60, verse 8 to verse 21. In the verse 8, it says, the other apostles came with the canoe, pulling the net full of fishes. Verse 9. When they went down to the ground, they saw coals lit there. So they saw lit coals there, and non-animals' food on them, and bread. So, what does that represent? Because we know that when the entities, for example, regarding Eli, the prophet, when the entity, if they bring you food, it won't be meat. It won't be animal food. Even the grease, there won't be any animal part in it. Contrary to what the current classical Bible affair claims. They claim regarding Abraham and the visitors and the visitor. It has nothing to do with that. So, if you eat in front of Jokisabe, it is non-animal food. Like at the beginning of the creation, when Moto ate, it was fruits and legumes. There were no meat. So Jokisabe had transformed his consciousness. He was no longer the man subject to the flesh, who ate good fish, breast pork. No. And you are not told here to not eat fish or animal food. No. This is to show you the state of consciousness of what happened during the creation, through the creation, and after the creation. Verse 10. Jokisabe said to them, show me, although he already knew, some of these fishes that you have just caught. So verse 10, Jokisabe said to them, show me, although he already knew, some of these fishes that you have just caught. And when he says, show me here, the me is uppercase M, so it's the superior being. And what does the fish symbolize? What does he represent? In this teaching here, the teaching they caught will symbolize those who live in sin, the uninitiated. They are going to be taken into the net of the alliance. So, and they were taken from the lake, so from the waters. And that water, that lake, that will symbolize the nation. That's why he says in front of him, you don't eat animal food. So once again, the fishes will represent the uninitiated that do not know Lopa. Verse 11. Dale got up into the canoe, and pulled ashore the net full of 153 big fishes, and though there were so many, the net did not break. So, now, so once again, verse 11, Dale got up into the canoe, and pulled ashore the net full of 153 big fishes, and though there were so many, the net did not break. Verse 12, Jokisabe said to them, come, eat non-animal food in my presence. Period. And some people claim, and they dare to say, that when the angels, when they appeared, they in Genesis, that they have eaten. No. Even that watcher with Tobit, all that is completely false. Verse 12, Jokisabe said to them, come, eat non-animal food in my presence, period. And none of the apostles dared to ask him, who are you? Knowing that he was the Muledzi. Verse 13, Jokisabe approached, took the bread and gave it to them. He did the same with the non-animal food, period. So the bread is britzi. So it was a teaching for them to have another consciousness, another vision, another way of seeing things. Although the apostles, they like to eat meat. And it doesn't mean that after that sin, after that happened, they didn't eat meat in the future. No. The way they considered, this is to show that the way they considered Jokisabe, the way they saw him in the visible, he was no longer the same person. Unlike what the fake Christians will say, they will claim that their so-called Jesus, their so-called false God, is the same yesterday, today, and eternally. So their so-called God still cries, since he's always the same. You see? But this is different. Verse 14. After they had eaten, so Kundumane Mula chapter 60, verse 14. After they had eaten, Jokisabe said to Dali, Dali, do you love me more than these love me? Question mark. So, why did Jokisabe ask Dali in particular? Why didn't he ask another apostle? Because Dali represents the one who is zealous, who has the zeal, the one that charge, who will say, "Oh, I will follow you till the death." But then when there's tribulation, the one who will say, "Me is Loba." Nothing else matter. But as soon as there is, for example, a woman, he forgets Loba. He'll represent those type of people. Jokisabe did not address Thomas, the one who doubted, because he was purified. He received the proof. So he addressed the rock, to sculpt the rock, to work on the stone, and to give what you want to the rock. That's why he says, Dali, do you love me more than these love me? Question mark. He replied to him, yes, Muledi, you know I, spirit, in bracket, love you. So Dali answers. He says, yes, Muledi, you know I love you. So that's the spirit. The spirit of Dali sincerely loved Jokisabe. And it was in a disinterested manner. So, and Jokisabe accepted. Jokisabe said to him, graze my lamb, in bracket, young graced uninitiated. Graze my lambs, in bracket, young graced uninitiated. So it means also the way you love me, also look after them, watch them, monitor them. And Dali understood. The fake pastors did not understand why the Christ asked Peter 3 times. The stone was being sculpted. He was being worked on. And Dali was spiritually advanced. He understood the language. Verse 15. He said to him a second time, Dali, do you love me? Question mark. Dale replied to him. So, Dale replied to him calm. Yes, Muledi. You know that I, the soul, so that's soul, love you. Jokisabe said to him, graze my sheep. Grazed uninitiated. So here, Dale replied, he says, yes, Muledi, you know that I, and that's the soul. So his soul was being sculpted. Because he was sculpted, in the spiritual, he was being sculpted. He was spiritually sculpted. Then, so that's regarding his spirit. Then, he was sculpted, you are sculpted on the inside. So that's the soul. And because in the first time he asked, then he said, graze my lamb. In bracket, young, graced, uninitiated. But the second time, Jokisabe said to him, graze my sheep, graced, uninitiated. So the word young doesn't appear here the second time. So because the first time it's regarding the spirit. Because you won't take an adult, someone who has his way of seeing things, to initiate a young children. Because young children are fragile. To initiate them, you have to be spiritual. You have to master, and you have to have an experience where you don't have a blockage, or things where the young one won't be able to understand you, won't be able to understand. In that, when the spirit of Dali loved Jokisabe, Jokisabe says, graze my lambs, young, graced, uninitiated. Because the last thing that has recently entered a young child is the spirit. And it is in the 6th month that the spirit enter. So the spirit is there to frame. So it takes someone who is spiritually strong to initiate the children. In that, even in the Current Classical Bible, you're told, let the young children come to me. So, and then from the spirit to the soul. The soul will represent the fusion between the fusion of the spirit and the physical, so the body. So, and the second time he says, graze my sheep, graced uninitiated. So no longer young children. Because the soul is no longer influenced by the flesh. The soul is conscious. An adult is being addressed to. So that soul is an adult that has someone who has the ability to reason. Verse 16, he said to him for the 3rd time, whoa. For the 3rd time, Dali, do you love me? Dale, in bracket, body, was saddened of what he had said to him for the third time. Was saddened of what he had said to him for the third time. Do you love me? And he answered him, column, Muledi, you know all things, comma, you know that I love you, period. Jokisabe said to him, graze my sheep, graced uninitiated. So here Dale doesn't reply the same way as the two previous time. Dale says, Muledi. What does he mean? Dale was very advanced. When he says Muledi, he means Muledi, sculpt me, sculpt the body, sculpt the stone that resists, sculpt me. And what does he say? Muledi, you know all things. You know that I love you. What does he say that the third time? He was being initiated. He was being sculpted. And when he's sculpted, when he's finished, he's done being sculpted, he has the revelation. He received the revelation that, hey, you know all things. So the stone was sculpted. The form, he was given a form. Verse 17, Kundumane Mula chapter 60, verse 17. In truth, I tell you, when you were younger, you put on your belt. You walked according to your truth. And you went where you wanted. Period. But soon, comma, you will stretch out your arms, comma, and the Mundi Musangi, Holy Spirit, will spiritually put the belt, truth, on you and take you where you did not think. So, here, he was, when Jogi Sabe had finished carving, sculpting him, the sculptor now is not going to leave the stone raw, fall off, do what he wants, go there and there. No. That's why in verse 17 he says, in truth, comma, in truth, I tell you. When you were younger, you put on your belt. You walked according to your truth. And you went where you wanted, period. But soon, comma, you will stretch out your arms, comma, and the Mundi Musangi, Holy Spirit, will spiritually put the belt truth on you and take you where you did not think. Period. Verse 18, and having thus spoken, he said to him, follow me. So, and in verse 19, Dali, having turned around, saw Lakisabe coming after them. So, in verse 18, and having thus spoken, he said to him, follow me. So, when Jokisabe was done sculpting Dali, so I have finished sculpting you. Now come. And in verse 19, Dali, having turned around, saw Lakisabe coming after them. So he sees the love coming, the forgiveness coming. He says to himself, but wait, if I was sculpted by love, but the love who is coming now, what will become of him? Is the love going to follow you the same way you want me to follow you? Here? And you're told he saw Lakisabe coming after them. It's, for example, when you are, for example, in a group and you take someone apart to speak to them in private, let's say in secret. Logically, those who are apart, well, they know that you have taken somebody apart, but logically, they won't come and trouble those who are speaking privately, who are speaking in private. But you are shown here that the love doesn't have barriers. It is not Jokisabe the Christ who told Lakisabe the forgiveness, the love to come. Why did Lakisabe come? And how did Lakisabe knew that Jokisabe was done sculpting Dali, sculpting the stone? All that because there was a revelation. So Lakisabe comes towards Jokisabe and Dali. Verse 20, seeing him, Dali said to Jokisabe, and this one, Muledi, what will happen to him? ? Verse 21, Jokisabe said to him, if I want him to remain until I come, what does it matter to you? You follow me. So it means if I want Lakisabe to stay in the visible for centuries until I come back, what is it to you? He doesn't need to be sculpted. He is ready. And that's why also when, for example, a sculptor has finished, he's going to place let's say his work somewhere nice, somewhere he likes, somewhere he loves. And in the somewhere he likes, somewhere he loves, there is the love. So that's why even in Act of the Apostles, we see more Lakisabe and Dali. So John and Peter, Lakisabe and Dali. So the love and the one who was sculpted by love. So they were linked. They were united. So that was the teaching. That was the teaching that was given to us by Zulula 100, the only teacher, regarding the unexpected manifestation of Christ. Transcendental initiation. All glory be to Loba, the only and unique creator.